2 weeks left in the season. A lot of baseball left to be played. And we going old school tonight with the first person I've ever done a baseball podcast with. Coming up next on the RotoWire Fantasy Baseball Podcast. Happy Sunday evening, everybody. Welcome to the RotoWire Fantasy Baseball Podcast. We're sponsored by DraftKings Pick 6. We appreciate them for the sponsorship all year long. If you could please rate and review the podcast, also helps us out a lot. If you enjoyed listening to us all year long, we'd really appreciate that. My usual co-host tonight is out of town. Jeff Erickson's still out of town. We had a good guest last week with Bat Flip Crazy. Got another great guest this week, Vlad Sedler from FTN Fantasy, one of my best friends in this whole fantasy baseball world, someone I've talked to baseball about and with for more years than I would admit, because it makes me sound really old. Vlad and I did our first RotoWire Fantasy Baseball podcast out of my garage with like one microphone and one laptop. The worst setup of all time, but it was still a really good podcast. But Vlad, I appreciate you jumping on. Always fun to see you. Always fun to talk baseball. How is everything in your world?
Fantastic, Scott. Thank you so much for having me on. I think it's the first time this year, but usually come on once a year. You hop over on mine, and we try to talk baseball as much as we can. But it's really kind of sad that it's almost over. Like I'm really going to miss fabbing on Sundays, to be honest.
You're like the only person that says that. Everybody's like, "Oh, I can't wait till the last week of Fab. This could be so really nice." You're like, you want to do 3 more weeks.
Yes, if we could run through the playoffs, I'd be happy to do that.
Beautiful. Can you tell everybody where to find your stuff? I don't think there's anybody that probably listens does not know where to find your Fab article on FTN, but give us a real quick recap on where they can find your stuff, where you work, what you do for this world.
Yeah, it's on the Twitter. It's at RotoGut is where it can be followed, and my work is over at ftnfantasy.com. I run the MLB content there. We have a fantastic team, very mid to high stakes, NFBC centric, focused. Most of my work is in the a lot of work all throughout the season, but a lot of the fun stuff is in the draft prep and the VDP projections and things like that. And during the season, it's managing, helping people win really in the Discords and with all the articles and my Fab stuff on the weekend, which is really a lot of fun.
Yeah, everybody knows me. Everybody knows me knows I don't read a ton of stuff or listen to a ton of stuff. I try and keep it fresh and do my own stuff. But Vlad's Fab piece is one of those absolutely must read things. If you're playing any kind of fantasy baseball, or be NFBC, your home league for some money with your friends, his Fab piece is like one of those things, like the 2 or 3 things that I read every single week. It's so good. You can just read it and tell how much work it takes. I don't even want to know how long it takes you to do every week. I know it's freaking a lot of hours, but it's one of those things that's a must read. So definitely, if you do not check that out, do so immediately, and definitely do so for next season.
Excel shortcuts, baby. That helps a lot too. I'm really I'm turning from like a intermediate to like a intermediate advanced, and moving between my Google Sheets and my Excel and the Fab page.
Impressive. It's sad. You and I used to send that stuff to our friend Russ Prentice, who was a fantasy Excel spreadsheet guru, and would come to drafts with you guys and do the Excel. And now you do it yourself. Look, you've grown up.
Yeah. Sorry, Russ has he's got a lot of other work, but we could always outsource things.
In my mind, Russ is just the fantasy spreadsheet guru, but Russ is a really good dude living up in Seattle now, so I don't know if he's listening, but shout out to Russ Prentice. Vlad, we got 2 weeks left in the season. It's kind of crazy. We're at this point. How's your season going? I know that I've been a little middling in the main event. I have teams just 6th to 9th place, for the last 3 months. Every time I move up a little bit, move back down. It's just been a frustrating year for me. Not my best season. I have one online championship team that is winning its league at the moment. So at least a little bit of money coming back there, hopefully. But you play anything big? Is there anything I got to root for these last couple weeks for you?
It's there will be money coming back, and it will be a profitable season again. But there's nothing that is like a fun, exciting sweat like I went through this time last year. I remember I was in Europe, sweating like the cut line finals, fighting for the overall, and in the middle of the night, it was weird. My biological roto clock would wake up at 3 a.m, I guess, when the games were over, in the East Coast time or West Coast. And I would just kind of check the box scores and standings, and then was sweating the OC overall this time last year. Instead, I get to live vicariously through some of our subscribers and some of our friends that are fighting for the OC championship. I will win a couple of OC leagues. I've got another couple where I've been down 20 points in the middle of the summer, and I'm creeping up trying to place there. I got a couple of main events that are like might get into third place. They're, in the 95 point range and just kind of need a couple of hot weeks. My Gladiator, which was first overall for a while.
That's what I was going to ask you about. I know you're way up there for a long time. Did just guys get hurt or what happened?
Nobody was hurt for the first 4 months of the year. And then it was, it started with Yamamoto. That was the dominoes falling. And at a certain point, it was Kyle Harrison then, remember, got hurt. And Verlander was probably a bad pickup to begin with. And of course, that league has no benches. So I'm like 19th overall there. So I'm not even close. The real fun one, to be honest, probably the best, most fun team I've had in a while. And it's so disappointing. It's the super auction that I drafted live.
I remember you liked your team that year.
Yeah. And Mike Mager, colleague of mine and our friend, probably future Hall of Famer.
He's been winning that thing since like May. It's crazy. No one ever keeps a lead that long.
No, even since April, to be honest. He's first overall since April, first in the league. And no matter what I do, there's just no catching. So, 115 points, not even close. The guy's like, almost maxed. It's crazy.
Are you second or third? I mean, you're still cashing, right?
Yeah, I'm about 10 to 15 on Bat Flip Crazy and Modica, who are, they're hanging out there. But
right.
I got the whole Yankees outfield and infield, I think. Unfortunately, they go to Seattle early this week.
We do have some familiar faces in the top 5 in the main event. Dave McDonald's in 5th right now. Jason Santiu, I think that's the same, right? He's in 1st and 3rd right now. That is bonkers. That's like, you feel like, I had a bad day. Oh, let me look at my other team, see if that went up. And our buddy Clark Olson, who I saw in Vegas this year wearing his Adam Thielen Vikings jersey as always. He's 2nd overall. Clark's a really good dude, so rooting for him. That's funny. As I said that, he just chimed in the chat. Hey, Clark, how are you? Good to see you in Vegas last weekend. And then Greg Martin is in 4th. Greg Martin in 4th place overall with Spencer Strider as his first-round draft pick.
The other interesting thing, you just named all those guys are 2 sports stars. So I've seen all them win big stuff in football as well.
Yeah, that's a good point right there. They got to keep the focus going right now, so that's it'll be fun. But couple of quick real baseball notes real fast. I know you're a Dodger fan. How do you feel at the moment? Dodgers have a 3.5 game lead on the Padres. Big win tonight against the Braves. They scored 7 runs in the 9th. Apparently, Tyler Glasnow has gone missing. He is on a flight. Dave Roberts says, I don't know where the flight's going. So it wasn't like to get an MRI. It just like his locker's cleared out. His nameplate's gone. I have no idea what's going on there. 3.5 game lead. All your pitchers are hurt. How do you feel about the Dodgers hanging on against the Padres here?
I honestly have no expectations.
Yeah.
If they lose the division, so be it. It's just a matter of getting hot at the right time in the playoffs. Yeah. The good thing is they do play 2 of their final 4 series against the Rockies, who they do occasionally lose some games to.
One against the Marlins, too. That's a great finishing schedule.
They have a nice schedule. So, the division's nice. They always win the division, but what really matters is the playoffs. Hey, there's one good luck thing is no Kershaw. So we got that going for us at least.
You're one of those, the Kershaw in the playoffs? Yeah.
It's bad.
Yeah, I feel bad for him. I really want every time he goes out there, I root for him just because I want that narrative to stop. But the NL wild card is probably the most fun thing in baseball right now. With the Braves and the Mets tied, and those teams are rivals anyway. The Diamondbacks are 2 games ahead of them. It's gonna be really a fun last 2 weeks in the NL wild cards. There's 4 teams for 3 spots. Although the Padres and Diamondbacks won today, game to game on both the Mets and the Braves. Mets Braves should be really fun down the stretch though.
You know what I was just thinking is what a difference maker Acuna is, because it all went downhill for them when he went down. And of course, other players stepped up. Others like Matt Olson, obviously not that great of a season. Pitching staff, obviously Chris Sale and everything. But Acuna there, if he was on the team, if Albies was healthy, I feel like we'd be talking a whole different story.
Whole different story. They'd be up there with the Phillies trying to win the division. The fun part is if the Mets and Braves are this close, they obviously play games this week, but next week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, it's Mets at Braves. If they're like tied or 1 game off, those games are going to be electric in Atlanta because those teams don't like each other anyway. Playing for 1 playoff spot down the stretch, that series would be really, really fun.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people are really big on the Padres. That's kind of the team I hear people talking about making moves at the right time. I mean, that bullpen is stellar. The rotation's coming back together. Musgrove's been now healthy for a couple of months. Darvish is coming back. He's got a nice 2-step this week on paper. Yeah, really like that team. And by the way, I don't know if you're going to mention the AL, but I'm kind of rooting for the Tigers to get in there. They're close enough where it could happen. A little more Brent
just because Paul Sporer just jumped in the chat. That's why I'm rooting for the Tigers.
No, but that would be excellent. He'd be very happy, I'm sure.
Yeah, he was fired up. We mentioned Greg Martin. It's a buddy of his who's in the top 5. But yeah, Tigers and Mariners are both kind of fun. Julio's really starting to hit. That team is so much more fun when Julio's playing. Their offense was so bad for so long. The Tigers and Mariners are both 2.5 behind the Twins. It's still live there. I'm with you too. I think the Tigers in there would be a lot of fun. I just think nobody expected them to be anywhere near this close at this point.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of this playoff race. I feel like it's so wide open. And even from a fantasy perspective, a lot of people that are usually used to fantasy players or key players getting benched in the final week or the last few days, or starters maybe going less and skipped. I think that's going to happen a lot less because there's a lot to play for here at the end.
That is true. These last 2 weeks are tough. Like, I feel like this is like the last week if you really want to make a big run. There's 14 teams play 7 games this week. And even if there's teams in it, any team's out of it, next week's tough. Next week's going to be a lot of short starts. Next weekend's like you get a lot of like 2 and 3 inning starts, a lot of bullpen games, a lot of guys sitting. This week is the week. Like, if you're going to make a run, if you're going to gain some points, if you got some ground to gain some categories, I think it's got to be this week. This is like the last moving week of the season.
Yeah, I was going to mention that maybe this was a better week to spend sort of, you have $40 left, spend most of it for this week.
Yeah. And you kind of saw that. We'll get into FAAB a little bit, but it felt like anybody with money bought DeGrom, bought Kumar Rocker. Like you gotta use it this week. So a couple of things I want to talk about, some topics before we do jump into FAAB. You are the self-proclaimed FAAB whisperer. You do your FAAB column. You talk about that a lot. I was wondering who you think is the best FAAB pickup of the year. Like, I'm talking deeper league, so 15 teamers. I know there's a lot of like fringe 12 teamers out there, like maybe a Brent Rooker or someone like that. But deeper leagues, guys who weren't drafted, who do you think is the best pick of the year? I have a guy in my mind, but I'm curious who you think that.
I mean, the couple of guys you mentioned, one of them that, sure, they were drafted in deeper leagues, but like a Jerkson Profar, Brenton Doyle, Lawrence Butler, those are the guys. And who was it? And Brent Rooker, right? These are all guys that probably were picked up on a lot of 12-team OCs early in the year. Actually, I got one team, a 12-team OC where I grabbed Rooker. It was like week 7. He was still available. And then Butler.
I don't think he's made it. I don't think either of them have made an out since week 7.
Yeah.
Rooker and Butler have, like, there was a stat last week, like Rooker and Butler compared to Judge and Soto since July 1. And it was like, and Soto and Judge have been awesome, and it was still really close. Those guys have been on fire.
Well, there's so many different guys, but it's also like, context dependent of like what you need at what time. I mean, me personally, my most effective pickup in the week where, I did a lot more of this year, was just going all in on one guy. Like, my bids were more synchronized, and my going in on Kirby Yates when I did, to me, was so incredibly valuable. And there was even a period of time where, sure, he wasn't giving up runs, but he was getting no save opportunities. The Rangers were not getting save ops. And now all of a sudden you go to any player rater, he's like up there among the top closers, up there among the saves leaders. I still an ERA under like 1.5. I mean, he's been excellent. So for me, he's been super clutch. Bowden Francis the last few weeks is just, right at the right time. Like,
you were all over that one too. You got him a week early on everybody, and it was really huge.
Yeah. Shades of Ollie Perez. What was it? 2004.
Really?
Right?
You got to go there on me? Damn.
Yeah, sorry.
Well, the Haiti kid, is that what that team was?
Yeah. I didn't even know who you guys were. I didn't know you were all one team.
Vlad is referring to the CDM Diamond Challenge, what's called that now. It's just called the Baseball Challenge, I think, on NFBC. But we didn't know each other, and there's this guy out of nowhere picked up Ollie Perez when he was a rookie, and I didn't give him a run for like 3 months. It was crazy, and passed us because Ollie Perez just kept throwing shutouts. So we'll never Ollie Perez is never forgotten here. My answer was Kirby Yates. I just think that if you get that season, and he was not rostered anywhere when he got picked up. He was picked up pretty much in all leagues. 56 innings, 1.27 ERA, 0.85 whip, and 30 saves. Like, he just answered save questions. There have not been a ton of save guys you could pick up, at least early in the year. A lot more of a kind of surfaced the last few weeks. But if you got Kirby Yates when his FAAB week came up, I added Jose Butto that week instead. Yates is my second bid, and I've regretted ever since. It would have been a bigger season. And then also 2 starters. Spencer Schwellenbach has been really good.
Mm-hmm.
He's been really sharp since he got picked up. And then Ronald Blanco in Houston also. Someone Steve in the chat mentioned him. But I mean, you look at Blanco, 150 innings, 2.99 ERA, 109 whip. In terms of starting pitchers, I feel like he's the one like universal starter that got picked up. Probably been the most valuable in FAAB.
Yeah, phenomenal, and it'll be interesting. I mean, to me, I think he's an easy top 100 pick. I don't think that's hard to say, based on the numbers that he put up this year. I'm sure we'll talk about it in a little bit, but there are a lot of guys that had like the Runel Blanco line there. It's almost like the Max Fried, where they have the low ERA and whips, and a K9, like right around, like strikeout per 9, like not massive strikeout guys, but the Brian Wu types, a lot of those guys that are kind of in the same bucket that we hope to get lucky with this year, but they're going to be priced up.
Yeah, the thing I like about Blanco with the strikeout rate, I just like the swinging strike rate. I think there's more strikeouts to come. The swinging strike rate is like 13%. So I think he can swing and miss. It's probably a matter of pitch mix and figuring out how to, get guys out. But I think that he's gotten guys out really well. But I think the more strikeouts will actually come. I think he could push that up to maybe a 27% strikeout rate and be really good, really fast. Obviously, he's already really good season. But I think the Ks are probably on their way.
Yeah, and Astros pitchers, just cheat code.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's hard to go too wrong with those. Speaking of starting pitchers, it's a good segue. Toby and I last week talked about like who we think the top 5 closers will be off the board in like a main event ADP. I'm just using that as a kind of a process there. Who are the top 5 starting pitchers? I think that, correct me if I'm wrong, I think Skubal, Skeens, and Wheeler are probably 3 locks in the top 5. Do you agree? You agree with that one? And we can kind of toss it. Those are going top 5 for sure, right?
Without a doubt.
Okay.
Without a doubt. Yeah. And I think I do think there'll be some leagues where Skeens goes above him and above Skubal, but I do think Skubal is going to kind of be the 1-1. And either of those guys,
you mean 1-1 at pitcher, not
1-1 at pitcher.
Yeah, okay,
but as you know, if we're talking like NFBC, you'll see some of those guys taken mid first in draft champions, and then as we get close to main event weekend, maybe they'll be this year's Strider, right? Like the guy pushed up, like somebody, like Phil really wants pitching, and they have the 1-1, and they'll take Skubal or Skeens.
It really opens up after that, though. I looked at it. I played with it a little bit this afternoon, and I was like, those 3 guys are like locks in the top 5. And we're just, those guys are top 5 starting pitchers. Boom. Who the heck else is the top 5? Are we Corbin Burns? Are we the Tyler Glasnow? Who knows on his health? Logan Gilbert? Chris Sale has been unbelievable all year long. He's 35 though, but like this season is crazy. What is he? He's 2.35 ERA, 1.00 WHIP with a 27% K- walk. Like, dude is an unbelievable. Dylan Cease, maybe. I don't think he quite gets there, but like, who are the other guys in the top 5? Because I had trouble figuring out. It seems like it really opens up after 3. It opens up really early this year.
Yeah, I mean, I think you named the 3, and I do think Sale and Jacob deGrom round out the top 5.
Wow.
Yeah. deGrom, somebody we've talked about on the FTN podcast the last couple of weeks, and we had a few guests and a lot of sort of similar thought process. And actually, I mean, our friend Jason Anthony, my podcast partner there, he was making an argument to him. Of course, a lot can happen between now and then in the preseason, but the fact that the way that he looks at it, like Skeen's almost like a ticking time bomb because he does throw hard and hasn't had the surgery yet. Meanwhile, deGrom's just gone through it, and if he's solid and everything is good, like for him, it's almost counterintuitive, but he's almost like the safer pick. I know that sounds kind of crazy, but I don't know. There's maybe something to that.
Man, I just don't know. Like, if you were to do you do projections over at FTN, like, what do you project for his, and they say he's healthy in his spring training. What do you project for his innings? He hasn't thrown 100 innings since 2019. Like, that's 5 full years of baseball. I know one of those is a COVID year, so let's toss that up. But the last 4 years, 92, 64, 30, and then obviously this year is, 3 2/3. He'll get to 15 innings maybe then the year. Like, is it impossible to project him more than like 120? Like, it seems impossible for me to do so. It's hard to get him in the top 5. He's not going to throw that many innings.
Yeah, exactly. That's it would have to come down to 130 plus. So I was thinking 120, 140 range.
Yeah.
But I know Sale, not quite in the same boat, of course, but thinking back to number of innings that he threw. I mean, last year he had already thrown 100, so that's a much.
And he's at $170 this year. So like all pitchers are taking time on him. At least you've got that base. I just know that DeGrom can throw anything. My guy's Logan Gilbert. I love Logan Gilbert, man. He's got a .89 WHIP this year. Like, that is a bonkers number. He's got a walk rate under 5 the last 2 years. Strikeout rates up a little bit. Swing strike rates up over 2%. He's at 185, 190, 191 innings the last 3 years. This guy's a horse. I know the Mariners offense has killed him. He only has 7 wins, which just kills his roto value. I get that, but I'm fine with the Mariners offense kind of moving forward with Julio being healthy and whatever it may be. I think Logan Gilbert's my guy. I think I'd probably go Sale 4 and then Gilbert 5 if I were to do it right now. What do you think about Corbin Burns? Where does he kind of slot in for you? It has not been the best of Corbin Burns years, but he's still 306, 112. So like the best of Corbin Burns, maybe not, but still really, really good.
Yeah, I mean, Corbin Burns to me, I top 6, I would say. So, second rounder. He's, still pitching for Baltimore. I think that offense is getting better. Run support. He's been healthy. I think he's pretty solid. Always a good ratio guy. And with Logan Gilbert, actually, who would have thought that Luis Castillo of all ends up being the worst of their starters, or just so incredibly middling, and now on the IL. I mean, that rotation's insane.
If they get in the playoffs, man, that's an absurd rotation. They're so good. I mean, Miller's good, Brian Woo's good. I mean, their rotation is just so good. I mean, Kirby threw a 1-hitter today in 7 innings. Like, their rotation's nasty. It's fun.
Yeah, and the funny part, and I do take an L on Logan Gilbert because that was just somebody I was not drafting around that point. I think it's one of those things where I got a little overly granular. The walk rate, that's really the key for him. I think that's just phenomenal. It's just one of the best in that regard. But and again, some of it doesn't make sense. It's like, why would I love, this is where bias comes in, why I love Fried so much, who wasn't a big strikeout guy, yet, not in it. Gilbert, who was going a round or 2 later. But one thing to mention, swinging strike rate is a career massive boost. So he was in the 10, 11% range over his first couple of seasons, 10, 11, 12. He's up to like 14.5 now. So Logan Gilbert, maybe even just getting better.
Yeah, I think so too. I love Gilbert. Gilbert versus Burns would be really tough for me just because Burns is so established. But I love Gilbert. And it's funny you say you didn't have any. I don't have Logan Gilbert. Even I loved him. I talked about in the preseason how much I liked him too. And I'm like, that's the worst when you like somebody. Just 15 teamers are hard. You and I used to argue about it. I'm like, well, if you like this guy so much, why don't you pick him? I'm like, but it's 15 teamer. Like, you just can do a couple and not get a guy you like, or not be taking pitching in that range, or maybe someone jumps them. It's not always easy to get the guys you target. It's been a tough one for me because I really liked Gilbert and I ended up missing him.
And then I was going to mention the other guys. They're not obviously in this tier, but this is your Fried / Kirby type of guy. And of course, Kirby, not what we expected for the second, third round pick that we got, but a lot of these guys are in that same boat with phenomenal ratios and not that high strikeout rates. And so these are guys like Brian Wu, Shota Imanaga, Framber Valdez, even Bryce Miller. Those ratios are phenomenal too. So like all those guys, plus you throw in Fried and Kirby and probably another 3 or 4 we can find. And it feels like pitching is going to be really solid in that mid-range.
Do you stick Cole Reagans in the top 10 here somewhere?
Yeah, he's in there. He even has another level, by the way. If you look at his whip's a little high, it's like 115. I think he can, improve there. Kansas City's getting better. I like him. Yeah,
he dropped his walk rate 2%. Like, he drops that again, and look out, 14.5% swing strike rate. Stuff is nasty. K rate's almost 30%. He's someone that, in that maybe 8 to 10 pitcher range is someone I'd be targeting pretty heavily. I'd love to have some more Cole Reagans next year too.
I was just thinking back to one of my, I got a few hot takes every preseason, and I remember one of them was like,
hot takes? Never.
But I just don't, I don't make them, I don't say them just to make them hot takes. It's like how I actually feel. But one of them was like Hunter Brown was going to out earn him. I'm sorry, Hunter Brown was going to out earn Tariq Skubal straight up. Of course, didn't happen. There was a time when they were pretty close.
Hunter Brown's been awesome the second half, though. Like,
I think I said it like a week before his, massive explosion.
Yeah, it's and Skubal still has a chance. I think he's got past, but he still has a chance to win the pitching Triple Crown. He's been awesome. He's been fantastic. Let's get into a few news and notes before we jump into FAAB. I don't want to hit too many of these. Obviously, bad news in Anaheim. Ben Joyce diagnosed with right shoulder impingement. He's been really fun these last couple of months. He's done for the season. Obviously, if you had FAAB already, you drop him. If you have FAAB coming up a little bit later, obviously drop him. How worried are you about Francisco Lindor? He returned Sunday from his back issue, but he left after 2 innings. He's having an MRI on Monday. We mentioned the Mets right in the playoff race. This is a huge MRI for the Mets because Lindor has been, MVP 1B to Shohei Ohtani, who's going to win the MVP and deserves it. But Lindor has been as good as anybody's last 3 months.
Yeah, I don't know much more than everything that we've seen here. You would hope we have information that he's good to go before the game start, because that's a huge blow, just such a massive bat. The irony of it is, if hopefully he does not, but go on the IL, guess who's coming up? I mean, guess who's been already called up?
The other Acuna, right?
The other Acuna against fighting with his old team, against his brother's team.
That is pretty wild right there. We mentioned the Dodgers. Glass now likely out for the season. Obviously, we don't know where he is right now. Kershaw also done for the regular season. So that's, if you were holding on to him, I think everybody's already dropped him anyway. But a few bigger names. I use big names a little bit lightly. A couple big names, but missed weekends with kind of minor stuff. These are guys that you just want to make sure you check lineups on Monday. You want to make sure lineups on Monday anyway, but these are really key guys. Tyler Fitzgerald and the Giants missed the whole weekend, some back tightness. C.J. Abrams, obviously a big piece for a lot of people, missed the weekend with left shoulder soreness. And Stephen Kwan missed the weekend with general soreness. Again, we're getting to the time of the season, especially for Fitzgerald and Abrams, teams that aren't really in the race. Their teams have no reason to really push these guys right now, so you got to check those lineups. This is the last 2 weeks are pure grind mode. You have to check everything.
Yeah, it's funny, and I did tweet about this, but so I'm super hyper active with my lineups decisions, and whereas before, where guys maybe scratched on a Friday, it seems okay, it's nothing major. I might just leave them in if the options aren't all that great. But I had a draft champions where I just sat Stephen Kwan and I put in the only available guy that I had in the outfield, and it was Hunter Goodman, and he had the 2-homer 7 RBI game. I was like, yes. Doesn't happen often.
The Hunter Goodman you picked up because he has catch eligibility. Drop in the outfield. He hit his 2 bombs. That's beautiful right there. It's always good when that works out a little bit. There's a few other guys like Paul Sewell went in the IL, Ryan Nelson, a couple of guys that obviously are easy drops now. It felt like wasn't too much going on though. I think Lindor is kind of the big key. I mean, he's 31-27, not only for the Mets but also for our fantasy teams. Quick question in the chat for you, Vlad. Steven said, I'm a heated race for 3 whip points and possibly win a main event. Would you dare sit Dylan Cease versus Houston and sub in a top bullpen arm?
No, Steve, he's in one of my football OCs, and he.
I thought you were saying you're in that league with him, and you're gonna give us some bad advice really quick.
But he crushed crushed this week in that league, so I don't really want to help you. No, I'm kidding, Steve. No, I think you play Cease. You got to play Cease.
His whip's 109. The walk rate's down. He's just you don't want to sit a gem. I know it's against Houston, but I agree with you. I'm kind of in a week like this. I'm pitching a stud like that.
Yep.
Let's get into some FAAB. But first, a note from our sponsors at DraftKings Pick 6. Do you ever play the over-under game with your friends? Think I can eat a slice of pizza in under 30 seconds? Or I know it'll take you over a minute to down that 2-liter soda. If you have, it's time. You're going to love Pick 6, the new fantasy game from DraftKings. Here's how to play during baseball season. Pick between 2 and 6 players and choose that more or less of a stat, like runs, hits, strikeouts, and more. Track your picks and play against others for a shot to win huge cash prizes. That's all there is to it. Download the new DraftKings Pick 6 app and use code RWPicks. New customers play $5 and get 50 in Pick 6 credits. That's code RWPicks. For new customers, play $5 and get 50 in Pick 6 credits. 6 credits only on DraftKings Pick 6. The crown is yours. 1 per new customer. Non-withdrawable Pick 6 credits expire in 6 months. Limited time offer. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. 18 plus in most eligible states. Not eligible in all states, including New York and Connecticut. Eligibility restrictions do apply. Void or prohibited. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos. Vlad, let's go starting pitchers first. I feel like the bigger name, we mentioned him earlier, your friend and podcast co-host Jason Anthony wants him in the top 5. Jacob deGrom was available about 80% of NFBC main events, mostly because he just wasn't drafted. He hadn't pitched yet, so you can't in NFBC you can't pick him up until he appears in a game, and then he's eligible on the pickups. What was he your top pitcher? Do you trust him to get to 5 innings his next start? Where were you on deGrom in this kind of starting pitcher pool this week?
For most of my teams, where I would have been able to get him. For the most part, I was in the $30 to $50 FAAB remaining range, and what I'm mostly needing are wins. And so I didn't particularly prioritize them. I did watch, part of the last start. Actually, I turned on the game right when he gave up his first rocket. I think it was to Luke Raley, and next one to Justin Turner, and then he was pulled. But anyways, I rewatched the start, and he was one pitch past his what was going to be his maximum, so he threw 61 innings, and he was close. And I think he can be next week, and I think he can absolutely get there. But there were some other guys that I felt that were in a better spot for wins that I thought would be more affordable, and I can kind of swing by and grab them. But I think DeGrom will grab one win in one of these final two starts. May not be in this game, but the next one. But I landed one share. Other than that, he was just going massively. As a matter of fact, in 44 main event leagues, his average winning bid was $36.70, which is the most.
I kind of referred to it earlier, but like he was the guy that if you had $50 left, you were bidding on DeGrom. And you mentioned the $37 winning bid. So I think that if you had money, DeGrom was the way to do it. You're going to get good ratios. You're going to get some strikeouts. The wins might be really tough, like you mentioned. But what else were you doing then? I know that you and Tyler McGill have a long history of not being friends, so I wasn't sure if you're bidding him. Reese Olson coming back for the Tigers this week. It looks like he's going to pitch tomorrow. They didn't announce it officially as of last when I looked about an hour ago, but maybe they have since. What were you doing in starting pitching? If you weren't getting DeGrom, who were you trying to get to help you out these last couple of weeks?
It was tougher in 15 teamers. I did end up with a couple of Tyler McGills, mostly in 12 teamers. I was in a tough spot deciding between him and Jordan Wicks because both Wicks has a much nicer two-start week on paper, and our projections came out. The model spit out the info right before the FAAB deadline. It had McGill considerably over Wicks, and I just kind of went with it. So in some leagues, I just didn't know where to go. But it was that. I don't feel great about it. Jack Kachanowicz for the Angels facing the White Sox.
It's good pronunciation right there. You flew right into that. That was nice.
To make up for previous errors that that you correct me on for sure.
That was pretty good though. I would have gone a little bit different. I'm glad you're the one that said it. Yeah, I mean, I think we're at the point of the season. I mean, it's been for many, many years, but man, if you pitch against the White Sox, like you just throw it, right? Like that's just, they're so bad. But I was in on Jack K a little bit is what I call him. What did you do with Kumar Rocker this week? This is someone that like 4 or 5 years ago, we were all fired up on. He was at Vanderbilt throwing 100 miles an hour, had the injuries, had the weird draft stuff that went on. His average ad and you sent me this list, 59 bids in the main event. His average bid was about $18. What did you bid on? Did you bid on Kumar Rocker? Are you expecting him to pitch enough innings? Do you think it seems like he's going to get a start next week for Texas at Oakland. Were you in on Rocker?
No, I wasn't, only for the same reason. So, and this is always a tough spot because now we're looking at what we need. And for me, it was wins and not knowing if he will go beyond 4. As a matter of fact, if I'm not mistaken, he's only got about 8 or 9 innings max left in him. So I don't know if he'll, get there to the 5-inning mark. And so I actually had him lower than the McGills and these other guys, Reese Olson's, who, even Reese Olson may not even pitch 5 innings, but he might go twice this week. Maybe by the second start, he'll get there. He's been throwing, I think, 39, 45 pitches, but I think he'll be fine. Joey Cantillo was in the mix. He had a, $6 average winning bid. I think Kumar Rocker will be great in the few innings that he throws, but for ratios and for strikeouts, those that need it.
When you're doing FAAB this week, do you look at next week also? Like, are you trying to get guys who have like 3 starts? Someone, Paul Spohr in the chat mentioned Davis Martin. He was someone I was looking at. Not only gets the Angels this week, but then he has potentially 2 starts next week. I know that next weekend might be, who knows, but like you can only plan what you plan for. But he would get home against the Angels, then at Detroit next week. And he seemed like someone that you don't necessarily 2 starts. You get 3 over the last 2 weeks. That's really helpful.
So I do not want to jinx a certain player, and I don't want to, obviously. But again, we do not have control over these things, so I can just speak freely.
Please do.
But I did point out in my column, it's totally anecdotal. But 2 years ago, Davis Martin.
I remember that start last day of the year. Holy moly.
9 earned runs on the last day of the year, and it won me a league because someone else played him.
Oh, that's beautiful.
The main event. And so as soon as I saw his name, I just had to look it up again and just to kind of bet him. I know the starts are nice. Again, me chasing wins. I don't know if they're going to be in a good position for win, but we'll see what happens.
They're definitely not going to be in any good position. They haven't been in good position for wins all year long. But yeah, it's 2 starts. There are not many of those going to be next week, especially because a lot of guys that are on contending teams won't pitch next Sunday, pitch next Saturday, that sort of thing. And I remember that Davis Martin start. He was one of the bigger bids that I actually got outbid on him. I remember that in the week. That was the year that I was contending for the overall. I did not have him. I had some other guys who exploded on me, but man, that Davis Martin start, like that was a crippler right there. That was brutal. Like you were doing like the live, you're doing like a live stream with some of the people that were like Ben Tidd and a couple of the guys that were in the top there. And I think that was the day that Martin was pitching, and everybody was just like, oh my God, it was brutal.
Yeah, a lot of money was moved on that day. You know, the guy did pick up in I think all my mains in auction was Cooper Criswell, who is all right. He's at Tampa this week, and then does possibly project for a 2-step next week. And so I actually I'm not even really starting him this week. So that was a little bit more of a stash. And so what's probably going to happen is he's going to get the win I need this week, and then when I play him next week, he won't get them.
Of course. Another guy that I liked who's been pitching really well is a Brant Herter in Detroit. He's kind of they've had some piggybacks where like they have an opener and then he pitches, but man, 5 no-hit innings, 5 2/3 no innings against Baltimore this week too. It wasn't like he's pitching against the White Sox. 8 strikeouts, 1 walk, 5 1/3, 1 earned run, 5 1 earned run the last. I mean, he's had a bunch of like chunk of these starts, and hasn't started all of them. He's only started one of them. It was the game against the Angels, but he hasn't get more than 2 runs since August 10th. I mean, he's been really solid in a team that's playing well. Like you might be able to sneak a win out of Brant Herter this week.
Yeah, even if it's Baltimore, it doesn't matter. Those are going to be, I think, probably a low-scoring game. Probably line up against Burns. Brant Herter, more like Brant Hurler. It's amazing.
Yeah. Oh, good one. Oh, there you go. You had to get one in there, right? You mentioned. Good. You mentioned Jordan Wicks. He's only 6% rostered in the NFBC 12 teamers. He gets Oakland and Washington this week. You mentioned you kind of put McGill over him a little bit based on the FTN projections. Do you like Wicks, someone you're starting this week if you have him, right?
Yeah, I'm starting him, and it's one of those just like spray and pray because he has been pretty bad the last couple of weeks. He's only been back for a couple of weeks, and then again, Oakland and Washington is, if you think beyond the team names, like these are not the same teams, right? Like Oakland got Butler and Rooker and all these guys just mashing. Geloff is back to being good again, and then other than striking out a ton, and then the Nationals kind of sneaky, like these Andre Chaparro and
you mean Chappie version 2?
Chap 2, yeah, Chappie 2.
Yeah.
Jose Tena, the Uncle Ted guy. He loves Jose Tena for months. Been talking about.
And they got James Wood and Dylan Cruz playing every day. Like the Nationals are not one of those teams you're like, oh, easy start. Or if they're on TV, I'm like, oh, are Wood and Cruz and Chaparro coming up? Like they're kind of a fun offense to watch right now.
James Wood, just a couple of casual 2 home run game for him, just like nothing.
He's it's funny because he had that stretch where he didn't have a pulled fly ball for like a ton of at bats to start the year, and then all of a sudden the home runs started coming. He's really funny. He's going to be really good next year. Where's he go next year? About 7th round, 8th round?
No, I think he's going to go higher than that.
Higher than that? I'm always too low on those guesses.
Home run speed, just a little bit of everything.
Since that question came up, I got another one for you. I didn't plan for this one. Sorry. Where does Jackson Chourio go? This dude has been unbelievably good. He's now he's at 21 home runs, 20 stolen bases, had 5 RBIs up to 77 runs. He started slowly too. And man, he's a 2020 guy hitting 273. Is Chourio a 3rd rounder? Where are we talking next year?
That sounds about right.
Yeah.
Might even, that sounds about right. Like in the 30 to 40 overall range. Think about where he was with no experience whatsoever, going around pick 100. And now it's just, he's just exceeded all expectations. He's coming up in the clutch right when they need him. They needed someone to step up when Christian Yelich went down. Like it's just magical. And he's a rookie.
He was born in 2004.
That's the Oli Perez year.
Is that disgusting? Like he's
so
20.
Young.
He's 20. That is crazy. I wonder if he gets into some second rounds. I think that maybe your 30 to 40 might turn into 25 to 35 by the time main events get drafted. He feels like someone that people would want to jump up and get.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Anybody else starting pitcher wise, or anybody else on your list? I know you do. Obviously, your FAAB column. Anybody else that you want to mention? I kind of feel like we hit all the names in there that were workable this week. Is there anybody else that you were interested in making putting bids in on?
Alec Marsh was someone else who I drafted in the beginning of the season, and obviously it didn't go how we planned, and of course, lo and behold, this past start was another double-digit Alec Marsh game that always comes out of the blue, and so he gets the Tigers this week. Usually a good matchup, so I think that's a good one. Joey Cantillo has a tough one against the Twins, but he's looked good as well. He's been keeping the walks and the hits down. Really, that's about it on the pitcher side. I maybe just mentioned that Justin Steele is probably going to make a start.
Yeah.
He had an average winning bid of $11.
Yeah, that's a good call there. If you need, saves are usually a category that are really kind of clumped up at this point of the year. If you need 2 or 3 saves to make a move, was there anybody you liked this week? I think the obvious answer is Luke Weaver. Again, we talked about him last week, but he's still 68% rostered in the main event. He was still available in 32% of leagues. I know that Tommy Canley got the save today, but it seems like Weaver is kind of the guy right now. I know that Aaron Boone wants to go back to Clay Holmes, but I don't think he'd do it right now. And I think that I think it's Weaver for these last couple of weeks and maybe into the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, wanting to do one thing and then doing
Yeah.
another is, and the Yankees management, they wanted to have Alex Verdugo there because he was the better option than Jason Dominguez, and then 2 days later they changed their mind. So can't trust that franchise.
Verdugo was terrible too. Like that took away. I know that Dominguez was hurt, but man, having Verdugo lead off as long as he did was brutal. He was so bad.
Yeah.
I think Weaver's the obvious answer. Anybody else? Jesus Tanaka in Miami seems to be he's pitching really well, but it seems like they're not going to win games. But at least he's the guy. Tyler Holton kind of sliding his saves in Detroit. Is there anybody you like for saves? If somebody needs 2 or 3 saves, where would you turn right now?
In a lot of 12-teamers, Porter Hodge was available. He had 1 blow up this past week, but I think Porter Hodge they line up for a very nice schedule this week. The Cubs do, and so I think he is somebody that if especially maybe some points leagues you're in the playoffs or something, just shallower leagues, if he's around, I would go ahead and grab him. But really, there isn't much. I think Luke Weaver is a top guy. There are some leagues where Tyler Kinley's out there, and he's been great, but be careful. 2 series against the Dodgers, one of those in Coors a couple series. It just seems like it's not going to end well for Tyler Kinley.
Yeah, the Rockies have 4 series left, 3 of them at Coors. So offense, great, but pitching is and their other series, like you mentioned, is at the Dodgers. Like that is there are no easy spots left for the Rockies at any point. So that's every time I look at Kinley, I'm like, I don't know what to do it, but. Let's talk about some offense. There were some names out there. A lot of them are kind of guys coming out of the minors, and Dominguez and Jordan Walker. Some guys coming up from injury. Jordan Westberg, although I think he's a little bit too off for me to really be interested. But Carlos Correa was back. He was about 2/3 rostered in the main event, less so in 12-teamers. Of these minor league and injury guys first, Correa, Dominguez, Walker, and Westberg. I know you're interested in Dominguez. I know you're a big Dominguez guy. You added him a couple weeks ago before you got called up, but what do you kind of do with these minor league and injured guys, and who are you looking at?
Yeah, I mean the injured guys. I think when I started putting everything together for FAAB on Thursday, Jordan Westberg really stood out. And then when I thought about it, I'm like, not going to be really usable this week. He hasn't even started his rehab assignment.
Yeah.
Maybe he comes out the last week. He might be rusty. Just didn't feel like the best situation. Carlos Correa obviously is going to get right back in there in the middle of the lineup. Can get hot at any time. He can go from off a rehab assignment and straight to just hitting again like nobody's business. So I think he's fine. I was really Pavin Smith was really the guy that I was going after this week, and I know he's kind of had his hot week, so you're kind of buying high. But listen, they're going to Coors 3 or 4 games against the righties. He's been playing in the middle of that lineup. That no team has scored more runs in baseball, so some good opportunities there to score some runs. And then
the D-backs score like 10 runs every night. It's crazy. Every time I look up, D-backs got 10 more. Like, it's wild. Real quick, I'm just going to pause for 1 second. I want to go back to pitchers. Someone in the chat, our friend Anthony Gialdi, mentioned, any thoughts on Bobby Miller? He has 2 starts this week. I didn't want to miss him at Miami, home Colorado. Like, that is a beautiful start on paper, 2 starts on paper. I'm pretty much out here. I've been burned like multiple times already. I picked him up. I drafted him high, dropped him, picked him back up. He blew up. He's been so bad. I don't think I'm doing it, but would you do it for at Miami, Colorado, which is as good as it gets on paper? I
actually did do it, and this is after dropping him last week and not playing him for a couple of weeks, and it just came down to teams where I need wins. If you need ratios and not as much on the wins, then do not pick up Bobby Miller because we don't know how that'll go. I'll tell you one thing. He's going to be a heck of a bargain next season. And I know most people will be out, but I probably
are you planning on being back in?
Want to see what happens in the spring, but I mean, it's going to be that far back because people are going to be so out of the damage that, that he did to us this past year that
not only a bust, but like a super hyped helium bust. Like everybody wanted him and everybody wanted him more in March. He got pushed way up like middle of the 4th round and he has been just a dumpster fire.
Yeah, it's just an odd year. Like Dodgers pitchers kind of off, and then Braves hitters kind of off. Like these things, they don't stay consistent. So I'd be interested.
Yeah, but I mean, I tell you what, at Miami, home Colorado, you cannot get better on paper than that. So I get it. If you want to go for some wins, do it. But I think that I'm out and scarred, which means it's probably time to jump back in, right?
How did Uncle Ted hear us? He heard us talking about him, and now he's in the chat. I guess he just does all the
It's what Uncle
shows.
Ted does. Uncle Ted knows
Yeah.
what's up. He's a very loyal listener. We love Uncle Ted in the chat. It's always fun. Offense otherwise, we talked about kind of the injured minor league guys. A couple of guys that came up. Jonathan Aranda in Tampa Bay has been playing a bunch. Thomas Sagasi in St. Louis and Nathan Lukes. Some guys are gonna call up. Did you like any of these young guys? Tyler Stonerson, you could probably toss him in there. He was up already for the A's, but now he's back off the IR. IR is football. IL, I'm football mode. Sorry. What'd you do here? I really liked Jonathan Aranda. He was the guy that I wanted to pick up. Playing a bunch, was pretty good in the minors. Has shown some stuff, and it's kind of a legit prospect. I liked Aranda here for the last couple of weeks with him playing almost every day, and I think the Rays get a bunch of. It works out for his platoon split. They're facing starters they could start against.
Yeah, they've been giving unfortunately, it's coming at the expense of some Yandy Diaz, who's been resting a little bit more often. I think we're going to find out next year. I know he's been fine, not quite the fantasy value, but I think we're going to find out that he's been battling injury all season long. I think we're going to hear that coming up in a few months here.
It's funny because that range was him, Torkelson, Tristan Casas, and Josh Naylor, and only one of them worked. Like there's like that group of four guys, and everybody's like 8th, 9th round to get your first baseman here. It's a really nice pocket of first baseman. 3 of them have been really bad.
By the way, I think also people are going to be kind of soured on Tristan Casas outside of the diehard Boston people, just because he's been really weird this season, right?
He's been really weird. It's your kind of guy, though. You like weird guys.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
But he's also been bad, and even kind of in a platoon split at some point. So again, those are my kind of guys. The weird guys that coming off kind of an off year, they were hurt, and just market has depressed their prices, and then that's where the money's made.
It'd be interesting because everybody loved him this year. It'd be interesting if people are back in on him or not, just because maybe you toss it out for the injury and all that. But I liked Aranda just playing a lot. You look at his minor league stuff. There was some pop there in 2023. He had 25 home runs in AAA in 2023, and he's been hitting. I know he hasn't played much in the minors yet this year, but he was still had 7 home runs in 32 games. He just feels like a guy to me that maybe you could run into a hot 2 weeks with, and I like that. So he's my top guy in that range. You mentioned Pevin Smith had the huge game. We had 8 RBIs in the first 4 innings, or whatever the heck it was. It was a crazy game last weekend. Anybody else you liked offensive wise? It felt like reading your article, maybe Michael Ciani and Johan Rojas. Just like if you need stolen bases the next couple of weeks, those were kind of the 2 guys that worked. I know that Ciani had another stolen base today. It felt like if you need 2 or 3 steals, mentioned 2 or 3 saves earlier, 2 or 3 steals, maybe Ciani and Rojas getting pretty regular playing time could steal 2 or 3 bags for down the stretch.
Yeah, especially for teams, maybe some competing in overall competitions where they really need the stolen bases. And I remember getting a few questions about it. It really made me dig in. And so I was looking, well, first of all, the first thing I always do every week is how many lefties did the Royals get? Because how many, is Darion Blanco going to play? Because, I mean, the guy doesn't even need a plate appearance to steal 2-3 bases in a game. It's crazy.
I think his last 4 steals are without a plate appearance, which is kind of wild.
Yeah. Who was a guy that was a Gore?
Terrence Gore had 15 stolen bases against the A's in that wild card game when they couldn't throw at anybody. And I just have nightmares about Terrence Gore getting on first and he's on third 2 pitches later. It was a disaster. Some of the chat mentioned Angel Martinez with the Guardians. If Kwan stays out, he might be an interesting guy that could lead off, and they have 7 games this week. He was a 7 home run, 5 stolen base guy in the minors in over 55 games. I don't know what you're getting out of him. Maybe a little bit of batting average, some runs if he does lead off, but not a lot of speed power either.
Yeah, I mean, I hadn't even really thought about it, and I figured that Kwan would probably be back. And it doesn't sound like the
general soreness. You got to figure he plays, right?
Yeah, I mean, outside Pavin, I know it's Pavin, but Pavin the Roto Maven, because that's what I like to call him.
Is it Pavin? I always mess that name. It's one of those names I can't get right. Yeah.
I don't know. Either way, he'll be back in the minors again, and then 6 RBIs in some random game in September next year. The catchers were an interesting spot because on teams where you've got a second catcher, you got to play it honestly, week to week.
Yeah.
And man, I cannot tell you how happy I was when I picked up Bo Naylor for what was like the 4th time this season. And then he had like
Dude, I had that
combo meal.
he had that 2 stolen base game, and I couldn't believe it. I think I had a bid on him, and I stuck with Travis d'Arnaud, and he went on the paternity list like the same day. And then Bo goes deep and has 2 steals. I was cursing your name because you brought him up, and I should have bid a couple more bucks on him.
You know, $1 million idea. It's somebody that knows everybody's baby schedule, like when their wives are having babies, and then
Right?
you just know you don't have to sit them, or when you have to sit them that week.
But then you get to put him back in for baby swag, which always works. Guys play really well after having kids, but well, get out of the house and can actually sleep in the hotel, right?
That's true. No, the catchers in general were interesting. I mean, it's the grinding, the
who else did you like besides him?
Gabriel Moreno, because they are going to Coors, and him and Adrian Del Castillo, I think, are going to split time. But I do like Moreno. Just, I mean, anyone in Arizona, just get in there at Colorado. They're scoring a bunch of runs. Yeah. You know what? I wasn't even really in on Hunter Goodman, and he was one of the most popular ads this week. And obviously, it was because of that one game and partial, 3 or 4 series of Coors. He had an average winning bid of $4, and he went in 44 leagues. So. Joey Bart is who I picked up on most 12-teamers.
Joey Bart's been good. Getting out of San Francisco has been good for Joey Bart. Our boy Henry Davis has not been so good.
No.
Couple of questions in the chat since we have a few minutes here. Do you think Corbin Carroll sneaks back in the end of the first round? He was really bad early and really good late. There was I forget what the stat was, but I think since August. Maybe this is July 1st. He has like the most runs in all of baseball. I know we talked about a lot about the Diamondbacks scoring runs. Where do you think Corbin Carroll ends up? Does he get back into the first, or we're talking more mid-second?
Yeah, I mean, right around there. I feel like I would have to run the exercise of throwing all the players there and then trying to figure out where the market's at. But I mean, it sounds about right, especially. But
he's definitely moved way back up these last like 6 to 8 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, he went from like, nobody wanted to draft him again. He was going to be like a 5th rounder to like, yeah, he's back into the
He's going to go 20-30 with 120 runs.
Yeah.
Not too bad for a down season right there. Other question, where do you think Kerry Carpenter goes in a 15-teamer last year? Has had some injury issues, but when he's not been hurt, he's been productive. He has 15 home runs in only 76 games. A really nice power setup there. If he can play 140, 150. He hit 284 too. 18% barrel rate on Kerry Carpenter. Like, that's the elite. Like, that's going to be up there with the top guys. What do you think about Kerry Carpenter next year? I don't think he'll be really high, but I think there'll be someone that people will like in that. I don't know, like a 10 to 12th round range, maybe.
Yeah, it sounds about right. I mean, I think he's a great hitter, or turning into one right now. But again, platoon guy still. Maybe he'll hit against some lefties, but I don't know if that's necessarily a good thing. It doesn't really steal bases. But that Tigers team in general is, Riley Green has lived up to expectations this year. You got Parker Meadows there, kind of, back into the mix. I don't know if Torque will really be anything anytime soon. Maybe, Jace gets going, Jace Young. There are a lot of interesting players. I don't know. They still end up somehow only scoring 2-3 runs a game, but they have a nice mix of guys.
They do. I'm looking at, if you kind of look at guys who have, this is called 200 plate appearances. Kerry Carpenter has the 6th highest barrel in baseball. The only names ahead of him, Aaron Judge, Stanton, Ohtani, Juan Soto. We kind of all figured that, right? 3 Yankees is crazy right there. You would take a week and a half to guess the last one.
Of the barrel rates?
Barrel rates of guys with 200 plate appearances. It's impossible, so I won't put you on the spot. Plays for the Twins. How about that as a guess?
Oh, Wallner.
Matt Wallner. 3rd with a 20% barrel rate. You got to obviously drop it down to 200 plate appearances, but Kerry Carpenter's 6th and Matt Wallner is 3rd. That's pretty wild.
Smashes. Kerry Carpenter's a great power hitter.
Yeah. But Wallner, I mean, I know he's kind of been up and down and started slow. We liked him early in draft season. We liked taking him, but that man hits the ball freaking hard. Swing strike rate 17%. So the K's are 37%. They aren't going anywhere. But man, he hits the ball hard.
Yeah, and they've been letting him play against lefties. Part of that is the team's been hit with injuries. Buxton's always in and off the IL, and Max Kepler has been hurt as well.
I feel like the Twins have these just like stash of lefties that I can never forget. Wallner, Larnach, Kepler, Kirilloff. Like there's all these guys like they only play against righties, and every once in a while I'm like, oh, this guy's got a sweet swing. I'm gonna pick it, and it hasn't seemed to work. One of these guys has got to hit. I know Kepler's had some good seasons, but one of these guys got to hit here at some point.
Kirilloff is flying the plane that Glasnow disappeared on.
I like that. He has been gone. It's just he's never gonna get healthy. It's just tough. A couple names I want to ask you about before we get out of here. Since you brought him up, Hunter Brown, 2.78 ERA, 79 strikeouts since July 1st. You mentioned how much you like him coming to drafts this year. I'm going to give you maybe a semi-win for that. I know the early rounds, couple months were really bad, but he's proven himself to be a really darn good pitcher. How do you think hyped he's going to be for drafts this year? What do you think he ends up being?
There's just a glut of a bunch of good pitchers in, we're talking like between 50 and 150 ADP, and he's in that mix.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking the same, like 7th, 8th round. I think he's someone I'd want in that range, though.
Yeah, and maybe there's even another level. I think if you look at his starts, just his game log over the last like 20 or so, he has very few blowups. He's been incredibly consistent. Yep. He's really settled down. Obviously, it's a good park for him, good division. I think he could be even better next year. Maybe there's a little profit there as well.
Another guy who is, I feel has been a little quiet since July 1st, but been really good is Michael King, who we made the transition from a reliever to a starter this year. I know he started a little bit at the end of the year last year for the Yankees, but, full season starter with the Padres. He's thrown 161 and 2/3 innings, 3.06 ERA is a really good number, 1.21 whip. He's, the swing and mitt, the strike rate kind of stayed there. I know he went down a little bit, but as a reliever, you always expect a higher K rate. The guys, pitch for an inning, you gas it out. But he's still 28% strikeout rate. The walks are a little bit high at 8.8%, but you can work with that. 12% swing strike rate. Where do you think that Michael King goes next year? I feel like he's someone that's kind of a little bit under the radar, considering he plays for a playoff team.
Yeah, and I think most, many didn't even think that he'd be up there in like the 170 innings range. But
I would have lost my over-under bet on innings for him this year for sure. 161, I would have been under that.
Yeah, he's obviously excellent. Walk rate is up a little bit this year, moving in most of the full season as a starter compared to last year. But I think that's kind of always the one concern. I don't think he's going to be especially helpful in the whip category. But an 8 to 9% guy there with walk rate, strikeouts phenomenal, and he's solid. I mean, price wise, I don't really know right now.
In the Hunter Brown range, though, I think, right?
Exactly.
Kind of in that glut of like guys in the 6th, 9th round that you got to pick your favorites and hope you do well there.
Yeah, he was like, this year, like last year's version of the Bowden Francis, where that last month and a half just was insane from start to start.
Question in the chat for you: Corbin Carroll or Jarren Duran next year?
I would go with Corbin Carroll, and this is not just my preseason bias against Jarren Duran, for which I take a huge L.
Yeah, he's had a great year.
Yeah. I mean, and I like a lot about Boston and Duran and everything, but I think Corbin Carroll, but I would have to break it down and analyze. It's too early to say.
Nope. I need you to give an answer now and stick with it for the next 7 months.
All right, Carroll it is.
I'm going Carroll too. I think the upside, especially the stolen base, is just so sky high, and I think that I think he was just so good late. And I think he kind of erased all my doubts in the first half. The first half was really rough. I think he's been so good. I think this Diamondbacks team is just going to keep mashing too. A couple other guys, I'm going to get out of here. My hero in one of my main events, probably my best pick in my main event, has been Willy Adames. This dude has been unbelievable. He keeps freaking staying hot. He's had a great year, but really great lately. He's got 109 RBI this year, 87 runs, 32 bombs. He's got 18 stolen bases. Never had double-digit stolen bases. He got 18. He's got a chance at 20. Willy Adames had a chance at like 35-20 with 110 or 100. I'm gonna go that 115 RBI, something like that. Man, this dude's been unbelievably good. Is he a top 50 player in drafts next year?
Yeah, I think people look at the the RBI alone and just everything else, how the steals pulled up, and I mean he was a really bad batting average guy the last couple of seasons, and it was one of the reasons I was not very into him.
Yep.
And since a little bit of a theme here, I take a lot of victory laps, but I also take a lot of L's, and I still remember this Willy Adames. There was something about, I think it was like O'Neal Cruz when he was struggling mightily. It was like in April or May, and I publicly on Twitter mentioned a few guys that you could, that I would rather have O'Neal Cruz than. And when I said Willie Adames, all these people were like coming out of the
really?
woodwork. Like, yeah, they were just mad. But there's one guy in particular, because 4 months later, he just popped back up into my DMs out of the blue. It's one of those, like, unsolicited,
Right.
you don't know who they are. It's like, oh, by the way, I appreciate your takes, but I don't agree with you on everything. But by the way, where do you stand now on, your Willie Adames thing? I'm like, dude, I take a massive L. He's phenomenal.
Yeah.
I was wrong. He was great. Fantastic.
And by the way, I will give you credit. I know I give you some crap sometimes when taking victory laps. You are very good about owning your bad calls too. And it's crazy because everybody in this sport has bad calls. There's nobody that doesn't have bad calls because we're trying to predict human beings playing a sport that's really hard to play. So that's I do give you credit for that. There are a lot of people who take victory laps and don't take the L's, and that really annoys me. I respect fully very much that you always admit when you're wrong on somebody, and you're right more than you're wrong. So you definitely get more victory laps than losses, but I do appreciate that very much. Last guy before we get out of here, I got to finish with an Oakland A player because I can't say Oakland A's very much longer. Only one more podcast saying Oakland A's is really tough for me. Lawrence Butler has been unbelievably good in the second half. We talked about it a little bit earlier. We were talking about him and Rooker. What's your prognosis on Butler for 2025? Is this something you think is real? Is this he had a hot 8 weeks and I'm out of here. What's his ADP like? What do you feel about him? What do you kind of think we're looking at for Lawrence Butler for 2025?
Oh, it's going to be helium central, and especially when we start getting into the Sacramento talk. I mean, people are
it's going to be. I don't know what they're going to do with that stadium because right now there'd be a lot of runs scored if they were to play games in there right now.
There will absolutely. I would imagine that there will be adjustments, but
it's 126 degrees every day in Sacramento in the summer.
Yeah,
the ball is going to fly.
Yes, it's like a mini hell. And Lawrence Butler is. Man, is he phenomenal. And he steals bases too. 15 bags and 21 bombs in 400 games. And it feels like, I don't know how many guys have had multi-homer games more than him. It's like Judge and, a few other guys. And then Lawrence Butler, he's just phenomenal. And God, if anyone sat him for that, what was it, 3 home run game that weekend? If you sat him, you'd probably hurt him.
There was like 5 minutes when you thought you did set him.
Yes, I thought I sat him.
You're like, I thought it's you looked. You're like, oh, got him in.
Oh no, yeah, because I had set my lineup for the next weekend. You call me crazy for that.
Speaking of taking L's, I'm gonna take one here. Paul Sports at Sacramento's Park Factors actually favors pitchers. Shockingly enough, I am surprised by that. That is,
really?
I would not have guessed that. I would have thought there'd be a lot of runs there, but
keeping the ADP down. Nice, Paul. Thank you.
There you go. I like that. Yeah, I think that the key for me at Butler is like you watch him play. He's like obviously very skilled and toolsy, and you're like, what if he strikes out too much? He's at 23%. Like you can work with that. Hard hit rates 49%, barrel rates over 12%. Like not only does he look good the last 8 weeks, but you look under the hood a little bit, it looks really good. This is a really exciting player. 21 bombs, 15 stolen bases on a team that I know struggled early, but he's been a key in getting them going again. They've been pretty darn good overall as a team since July 1st. I know they've struggled a little bit lately, but they've been really good. But man, Butler's just I keep looking for like a hole or like to pick something with him, but he just looks really good to me when I look at it.
Yeah, he's great, and he's getting at bats against lefties as well. He's just like the full-time leadoff guy, and yeah, I mean him and Rooker is magic.
Yeah, it's been
JJ Bleday. What's going on?
He's got a sweet swing too. I love watching JJ Bleday hit, and even Seth Brown against righties, like get some pop there, but. Vlad, anybody else you want to talk about? Anything else you want to talk about baseball-wise, life-wise? I don't know. Anything-wise? What else? Anything else on your mind before we jump out of here?
No, just obviously it's great to do a Sunday night show podcast with you. Always fun. Brings back.
I'm glad we fit one in. We took a long time to get there. I did appear on your podcast. It was really fun talking to you and Jason. I usually don't say yes to a lot of things. I'm just so busy. It's hard for me to say yes. I always say yes to you guys though. That was a really fun episode. I hope people listen to that too. More than anything, I want to thank you for coming on. I know that your life is busy. You got kids, you got family, you got stuff going on. I really appreciate you saying yes to coming on tonight. Always fun to have you. You're my favorite people to talk about baseball with for sure. Real quick before we get out of here, if he wasn't listening earlier, where do they find your excellent work?
FTNfantasy.com at RotoGut. And let's grind this out these last 2 weeks. Let's not get any ratios smashed, and get some stolen bases, and
there's going to be a Davis Martin start out there. There's going to be a 9 earned run start by someone people pick up. It always happens.
Rodon at the A's.
Oh, interesting. I like that. Hopefully nobody gets the Chase Anderson, Ronzi Contreras, where I had both guys pitching and the game got rained out. So they each pitched an inning and then left when I needed strikeouts. So hopefully nobody gets that. Obviously, I don't remember that. Still hasn't stuck in my head for the last 2 years permanently. But
Yeah.
hope everybody has a really good final 2 weeks. I hope all you guys make some good moves. Hope we helped you out during the season here. We'll help you out these last couple of weeks. Vlad, thank you for jumping on. Always fun to talk baseball with you. I believe Jeff Erickson will be back talking baseball next weekend. So looking forward to that. We'll have one more pod. I think next week might be our last Sunday night pod of the season. So I'll check that and get back to everybody on that one. Thank you for listening. If you want to follow Vlad on Twitter, he is at RotoGut, ROTOGUT. I am at Scott Jenstad. We'll be talking some baseball and probably some football there, but we'll definitely answer questions or lineup stuff there too. Want to thank everybody for listening, everybody for watching, everybody in the chat. It was a lot of chat tonight. We really appreciate that. It means a lot to us to have everybody listening and watching. I hope it was a really good week. Gain some points down the stretch here. We'll talk at you next Sunday night. Take care.